Good afternoon, viewers. I bring you greetings from the Rajiv Gandhi Cancer Institute and Research Center, New South Campus at Niti Bagh. We'll talk about precision medicine in cancer. What is precision medicine and where is it applicable? So this is an evolving approach to cancer care that aims to leverage all the new knowledge that is coming up regarding the pathogenesis of cancer to more precisely target therapy and spare the normal cells and the tissues. So better effect and lesser side effect. So as you know, all cells have DNA and the DNA is made up of genes, or vice versa, the genes are made up of DNA. How does cancer begin? Cancer begins when one or more genes in a cell are mutated or changed. This creates an abnormal protein or creates a protein with no function. What does this do? Sometimes what it does is it makes changes that alter the cell cycle control, and there is uncontrolled proliferation of cells causing what we call now is cancer. So these changes, how do they occur? They may occur by environmental factors like smoking or radiation, or they may even be spontaneous as a result of the various mutations that are occurring within our genes, which are normally repaired. But if there are genetic alterations which are inherited, or if there are environmental exposures which are harmful to the DNA, sometimes these changes lead to mutations that can cause cancer. So these environmental influences often break or damage the DNA. The normal physiology of the body repairs these DNA breaks. However, if this exposure is harmful or pathogenic, let us say, then the mutations do not lead to a physiological healing or repair, but the healing that occurs is abnormal, or what we can say is that the sequence of the genes or the sequence of the bases within the genes is altered. When it is altered, sometimes the information that is now read as a protein or that is now read is abnormal, causing abnormal or unlimited proliferation of cells. To understand another thing is there is not one mutation which causes cancer, and the other thing to understand is that not all cancers are caused by the same mutation. This is very important. It is not one mutation. So like you can see over here, this is a large number of cells. There may be one mutation first. There may be two cells with a mutation in the second mutation event, a third one, a fourth one, or many more, till such time as a certain mutation causes the growth control or cell cycle to be abnormal, to lose its control. Also, when multiple mutations are there, only one of them may be a driver mutation, and it is important to identify this driver mutation so that we know how to target the cancer. Now, the conventional cancer therapy, most of you would know, has three main modalities: surgery, radiotherapy, and chemotherapy. The surgery, as you very well know, will actually, we remove the tumorogenic organ or tissue, right? We just remove it. The radiation, what it does is it bombards the tumor tissue, burning it or irradiating it and destroying all the cells, not only the tumor but also the adjacent areas of the tumor, leading to damage or what we call collateral damage. That means damage in the neighboring tissues which are actually were not cancerous, were normal, and this would lead to side effects. So also the third modality of treatment that we call chemotherapy, it targets the dividing cells, and it usually targets the DNA of these rapidly dividing cells. Chemotherapy, again, is unable to distinguish most of the time between normal cells and cancer cells. Therefore, normal tissues will also get harmed or damaged, and this leads to the side effects which are unwanted and would impact the quality of life of the cancer survivor or the cancer patient. So when we know that a modality is effective, then sometimes we accept these side effects. However, if you know exactly what your target is, then you would not be blindfolded and you wouldn't have to hit all the tissues, by a general strategy, but you would have a more precise strategy to target the diseased cell if you knew exactly what was wrong and where it was wrong, right? And if it is a very specific target, then it is very clear that there will be less harm to the surroundings. So collateral damage will be minimized. So how does this work? Now we need a lot of detail. Lot of research has been happening in the last decade to understand the genomics of cancer, and we have been able to identify at the molecular level the abnormalities within the cancer cell. And there is usually some defect or a mutation which leads to the abnormality at the molecular level of the cancer cell. So if we know what that defect is, then we can try to find out if there is a druggable defect or a targetable defect. And once we can know which defect it is on the molecular level, we can characterize it, we can profile it, then we can use a drug which would only act specifically on that cancer tissue, and it would preserve the normal healthy tissues and cause minimum side effects. So all we need to understand the pathogenesis of cancer from the genomic point of view. And the Cancer Genome Atlas is one such huge database. Now how do we understand all of this? Is that each tumor, as I said, has different mutations or different genes which are altered within it. No two cancers would have exactly the same mutations. However, if we study it, we will find that you can see how much data, the human genome has 20,000 genes or even more. And when we compare the normal tissue with the cancerous tissue, we are able to identify the mutated genes. Once we find the mutated genes, then we need to understand which are the driver mutations so that we can target them and whether such drugs are available, and if they are available, then what is the best way to use them. So you can see this is like what is bioinformatics, trying to correlate the clinical part with all the genomic data which is now coming up with the information that we get by studying the genomics of the cancer cell. So I will give you a small example. This is the slide which is showing lymphoma. Now within the lymphoma there is something called a diffuse large B-cell lymphoma, and within it there are different mutations which activate the NF-kappa B signaling pathway. So you can see here the red star is showing you the mutation in the mutant or in the cancerous cell, and over here you can see that there is no mutation, right? And this is showing you the pathway. Once all of this happens, once we study and we find out that there is a mutation here, we try to find out if a drug is available which can target this mutation. And you can see here what is the treatment prospect. These drugs are available. They would probably bind here and they would inhibit the proliferation pathway. So in this way, we try the new drugs in different cancers depending on what the underlying mutation is. And I will give you actually a simpler example for a targetable disease, and that is a chronic myeloid leukemia. CML till a decade ago didn't have any good treatment other than bone marrow transplant till this agent imatinib mesylate was discovered. Now if you see here, in the chronic myeloid leukemia cell there is an uncontrolled proliferation of the myeloid cells, right? And there is this ATPase domain, right, which when it binds here would cause proliferation. Now the control is lost. Because the control is lost, the myeloid cells proliferate in an abnormal way. in an uncontrolled way. And this fantastic target drug, imatinib, goes and competitively binds to this ATPase site and shuts down this abnormal proliferation. So that is a fantastic way of showing how a drug target can control a disease like chronic myeloid leukemia, which otherwise did not have any good treatment. This was the start of targetable therapy. So targeted therapy is one of the prime examples of precision medicine. This is again showing the same thing. BCR-ABL, the CML has an abnormality called Philadelphia chromosome, and at the molecular level we define it as the BCR-ABL. It has a kinase domain to which the substrate attaches, right? And we find this imatinib which competitively binds to this site and shuts down this tumor proliferation pathway, right? So the substrate cannot enter this kinase site and therefore the proliferation cycle is broken. So it is a wonderful example of how targetable drugs can give excellent quality of life, precision medicine in cancer. Now coming to another disease, which is a lung cancer. You know that lung cancer is caused by smoking. There are different types of histological types of lung cancer. One such is the non-small cell lung cancer. In our country, we often diagnose it when it is very advanced and when it is inoperable. So within this non-small cell lung cancer group, we have an adenocarcinoma subtype histologically, which is 50%, right? Now adenocarcinoma, non-small cell lung cancer of the adenocarcinoma variety, now if you look at this pie chart, it will show you a large number of mutations which may be there in the tumor. So even within the non-small cell lung cancer adenocarcinoma subtype, there are multiple molecular subtypes, right? And one such, I will give you just one example, not to complicate it further. You can see here there's a KRAS 30%, EGFR 15%, 40% mutation is not known. And then there is this one small group called ALK. 5% have ALK mutations. And we have a druggable, this is a druggable mutation, and that's called crizotinib. So when the earlier trials were going on, we found only a subset of patients responded to crizotinib. And then it was realized that they responded so well for the simple reason that they had this ALK mutation. And patients with ALK mutation responded beautifully to this drug. So not only lung cancer, but there are many other cancers where when we study their genome, the important thing is that we need to understand the pathogenesis of each cancer and what are the underlying gene mutations that are there. And only when we understand those can we look for drugs which can target it. You can see here only 5% of non-small cell lung cancer, NSCLC as we call it, only 5% of these have ALK mutation. So the rest will not respond to this drug. So that is a limitation of the precision medicine and the knowledge that we have today, that it is available only for a few subtypes of the cancers, not for all the cancers, although it's a fantastic way to go. The other thing to remember is that does this ALK inhibitor or does crizotinib cure all the patients, or is it just like a magic drug and it will cure all lung cancer patients? So that also is not true. It does shrink the tumor, we know that, but we still don't know what is the best way of giving it. Do we need to give it alone? Do we need to combine it with other drugs? Is there another role for it? Will it improve survival of the patients? We don't know. But for chronic myeloid leukemia, we do know that imatinib not only it causes complete remissions, molecular remissions in a large number of patients. So in certain diseases, and I will say in certain disease subtypes, precision medicine is doing a fantastic job. The other thing to remember is that not all of us respond respond to drugs in the same way. And we call these differences pharmacogenomics. So you may give a drug to 2 patients or to 100 patients with the same disease and you may not get the same result. So even if you don't get the same result, is it because the tumor was different, or is it because the host, or that means the patient, metabolized that drug in a different way? And now we know that there is something called host genomics. That means not everybody metabolizes the drug in exactly the same way. These differences may be individual differences, they may be ethnic differences. That means the Caucasian population has a different way of handling the drug, while the Asians have a different way. Then there may also be that there may be a drug-drug interaction. That means you're using another drug along with it, which is changing the metabolism, that means changes level of drug in the body. So that is there. And then there may be environmental factors as well. So it is important to understand all of these impact precision medicine. These are important components of precision medicine. The host pharmacogenomics as well as the tumor genomics, which will help us to find the targetable mutations within the tumor. So if I may just give you a brief summary of what we have just said. When we have a patient with a particular cancer, right, or who presents with a certain symptom, and he meets the doctor, then we take a tissue, which may be a bone marrow sample in case of a leukemia, it may be a tissue in case of a solid tumor, right? This tissue would be sampled for basic histopathology. You would do certain markers, and then if you wanted to go for precision medicine, this patient would require the tumor to undergo sequencing. Now sequencing is very laborious, it is very expensive, but unless we do all of that, and then we analyze the data, as I said, the analysis of them, not only it will be processed, molecularly profiled, but also we will need to analyze it computationally, because so much data is generated when we sequence the tumor. Also we need to understand that now not only the conventional sequencing but rapid sequencing methods are available, so that we know this is lung cancer, we will do sequencing in a particular way. If we know this is some other cancer, we will do it in a different way, so that we can get the results quickly. So people do realize this limitation, that sequencing is laborious, analysis again is laborious, and then the most important part will be the interpretation of this report, because this is a new field. We don't know exactly what all these mutations mean. What does it mean in terms of prognosis? What does it also mean in terms of survival? And only after deep consultation, usually in tumor board, and then explaining what will be the exact role of this drug in the treatment, can we proceed on the treatment part. So it is a highly sophisticated one, and where we have to remember that this precision therapy as of date is available only to a selected few tumors with certain well-known, well-defined, molecularly characterized mutations, where drugs are available or have been tested. Now the American Society of Clinical Oncology in their annual 2016 meeting were very optimistic about the role of precision medicine. They say it definitely is here to stay. They say it's having good outcomes for patients in phase 1 clinical trials, and as you can see, the tumor shrinkage in these patients is definitely good. You can see 30% tumor shrinkage was seen in those patients who use these targetable agents or these targeted drugs. Also, the progression-free survival was a median of 5.7 months in those who received these drugs versus those who did not, which was 2.9 months. But did it mean that the overall survival was better? We cannot answer that question as of date. This jury is still out there for this question. We can't answer it clearly. So clearly, the scientific community or the scientific oncology community considers that precision medicine is not the future, but it is actually the present. And we need to personalize treatment. So precision medicine is a type of personalized treatment. So what is personalized? The tumor-directed therapy, as well as we consider the patient's response to the drug, so that we are able to improve outcome and have a good quality of life with minimum side effects. So if we conclude, we can say that in cancer care, precision medicine includes personalized treatments that target a tumor's genetic mutation as well as the host genomics. It requires precision diagnostics, which is the sequencing. It involves the genomic sequencing of the tumor tissue to identify the best course of treatment. There are certain, let us say, challenges here. We do not have targeted therapies, like I told you, for all cancers as yet. Only a small subset have targeted therapies. It is possible in future we will have many more. Secondly, many of these are still in the research phase, so we don't know whether they will be good as single agents or in combination of chemotherapy, and what is the best combination for them. There is definitely a issue of access to these drugs because they are research molecules, many of them. Some of them are in the market, some of them are FDA approved. Then cost is an issue because a lot of research has gone there. Further, what I will say is the sequencing and all of these tumor diagnostics will be costly, and I will repeat that, will it really improve survival? I think the jury is still out there. We hope that it will improve survival in the long run, and that research will really, more understanding about the genomics of the cancer will help us to improve survival and have good quality of life for cancer patients during the treatment phase and also afterwards. So with these words, I thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to take any questions that you may have.
So now we are going on with our questions. The first question from Pinak. Please let us know how many doctors in the country are using personalized medicine, and how many tests are being done in India on an annual basis.
So the question is, how many tests are being done and how many doctors in India are using personalized medicine? Very good question. I don't think there are any real statistics available for this question, but I will say that in adult medical oncology, so it's the medical oncologists who use most of these newer targeted therapies for lung cancer and other cancers. I think there are a large number of medical oncologists who are using it. So like I said, the diagnostics, so there are well-defined diagnostics tests for certain diseases, like I told you, chronic myeloid leukemia and non-small cell lung cancer. These tests are available in most of the large cancer centers in India. And these tests can be done, and that is, the reports are well reproducible. And once the reports come, we use the drugs. So yes, we are using them. Lots of doctors are using them in the big cancer centers in the country. All tertiary care cancer centers have access to the test, and they can use the drugs. But it is a small proportion of all the cancer patients who require these tests to be done, because there is still a lacunae in the knowledge about the genomics of the other cancers where a targetable agent is not there. I hope that would satisfy you. Any other questions?
Yes. Our second question is from Rohan. Where do we stand globally and in India when it comes to precision medicine?
So Rohan wants to know, where do we stand in terms of precision medicine internationally? So I may tell you, just like the internet has brought information from any corner of the world to India, simultaneously, so also I will tell you that earlier it used to take many years for the drugs to come to India. Now they come within the same year. They come very, very quickly. So most of our doctors in the big cancer hospitals, Rohan, they have the drug almost within a year of its being released abroad internationally. So we are pretty much up there. But yes, I do agree that the research in precision medicine, it is in the more developed countries. It's a very, very expensive affair, the research in cancer genomics. India is not there yet. We are still focusing on cancer treatment. Cancer research funding is still not in the same ballpark figure as it is in advanced Western countries, which are the developed world with lots of money available for research in cancer.
Our third question is from Dashrath. He wants to know, are there any institutes or hospitals in India which treat cancer by this approach?
As I answered to the first question, the large cancer hospitals throughout the country, they use precision medicine, but I may once more reiterate that it is reserved for a small subset of patients where the genetic profile is defined and where the target is available.
Next question is from...
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, ma'am, you can continue. Please continue.
So I will say, like chronic myeloid leukemia. All over the world and in every cancer hospital in India, CML is treated by targeted therapy, which is the imatinib. So it's there everywhere, and it's been there in India for more than 10 years. Okay, but for non-small cell lung cancer, it started recently, and it is again available in many. But there are a lot of new drugs also which are coming out. We don't know what is their exact role. So a lot of research is happening there. We allow the West to do the research, because it's very, very expensive. And when they have proof that this drug works, then it doesn't take much time for the drugs to come to India, and these drugs are being used in the large cancer hospitals in India. Yes, this strategy is available for patients in India. But insurance may or may not cover it. It depends.
So our next question is from Aparjita. Will these companion diagnostics for the mutation check ever become free or subsidized by government in near future?
Excellent question, because we must think of the large community of cancer patients who don't have access to good care, even in India. I think that the way, internet is now free in so many places. Mobile phone is available for everyone, right? Even like you saw, the drivers have their mobile phones. The panwala has his own mobile phone. Everybody has their own phone. Small kids have their mobile phones. So it's a new technology. It's a technology, but it's there with everyone. So the cost has come down. Health, for some reason, is not very high in the government's budgetary priorities. But I hope that with, India is trying to be one of the global leaders. And one of the things you require to be is to take care of the health of your population. So I think it's only a matter of time, and health will become priority. And cancer being one of the chronic conditions, top 5 killers, not only abroad but also in India, it will become a health priority. In India, mostly the cancer prevention programs, they are priority. But treatment of cancer, even though we are trying to set up lots of radiotherapy machines and all of those, there are a lot of initiatives. So I hope that in the coming decade, this strategy of treatment will be available to more and more patients. Whether it will be free, I don't know, but I think it will be available and it will be affordable to more and more patients as the time goes by.
Next question is from S. Ramesh. What is immunotherapy and what is its role as targeted therapy?
Very good question. I think I missed that one little slide on immunotherapy. So what is immunotherapy is to attack the immune, so to kill cancer cell by immune mechanism. Now I will take the example of lymphoma. So there are some high-grade lymphomas which have got a lineage marker for B cells or for T cells which define from which lymphocytes they are originating, whether they originate from the B or from the T. So our immunity is divided into two types, T and B, the humoral and the cellular. And the B lymphomas, they have a targetable therapy for them called rituximab. It's a monoclonal antibody against the B lymphoma cells. So that is fantastic. So in a way, it is somewhat targeted because it doesn't damage the T lymphoma cells or the T lymphocytes, but the B, a monoclonal antibody against B cells will kill all the B lymphoma cells as well as the B lymphocytes. So it will cause some immunosuppression. But it's an excellent drug. It is today used in combination with chemotherapy for adult high-grade non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which are positive for CD20. So yes, immunotherapy is a type of precision or targeted therapy. You're right, absolutely right. And there are such examples even for other cancers like AML, and so there are a number of immunotherapy strategies for hematolymphoid malignancies. Yes, and there is a lot of research happening here. That is true.
Next question from Preet. Are there any new drugs that have been introduced for targeted therapy in lung cancer?
Yes, lots of them. But we need not, there is not so much good research on all of them. I will say, every month new drugs are coming, not only for lung cancer, but for many other cancers. Many of them, so we have these TKIs, which are called the tyrosine kinase inhibitors, 1 generation, 2nd generation, 3rd generation, 4th generation. Then there are new immunotherapy drugs coming. Then we have these VEGF inhibitors. So there are molecular HDAC inhibitors. A lot of new drugs are coming. Many new. So if your patient has some condition for which a drug is available, you should consult your oncologist, and I'm sure he will be able to tell you that for your specific cancer, like I showed you, the lung cancer is again not one homogeneous disease. It has a lot of small subtypes depending on the underlying genetic mutations. So you meet your oncologist, I'm sure he will be able to let you know whether a target is available for the subtype of cancer that your patient has.
Next question is from Dashrath again. After genetic mapping of cancer tissue, do the specific drug designed for that particular patient?
So this is, very, let me tell you again, this is a very laborious and it's a very sophisticated research work which undergoes. You cannot try a new drug on a patient without having proof that this is safe for the patient. You understand? So there are two things to understand. One is that we have identified or characterized certain genetic mutations, and then we have tested them in the lab. We have tested them in patients to make sure it is safe, and only then we try it in a real person, because when you get a new drug, it can cause side effects which are heretofore unexpected. So it is not safe. Therefore, in the US, you have something called FDA approval, and it requires you to have tested. It has certain legal requirements that you must test it in so many patients. You must make sure it doesn't have, lethal side effects or other severe side effects. So that is not a safe approach. But if you have got, say, 5 characterized mutations, you've studied them in the lab, you've studied them in patients, you have found them to be effective, and now they are approved by your drug regulatory body to be used, then you test or you do the gene mapping or gene profiling of that tumor for that patient, and if one of those 4 or 5 drugs target is appropriate for that mutation, then yes, you can go ahead with it. But you cannot design a new drug for a patient and just use it. It is not the way medicine works. Patient safety is foremost. Also, this genetic profiling, making new drug, is a process which is takes many years.
Next question is from Pinak. I understand that novel tests like liquid biopsy have been introduced in the developed countries for cancer therapy selection and monitoring the response to the therapy. How do you expect adoption of liquid biopsy in India?
I think it's the way forward, and I think there are some institutes which are already doing liquid biopsies, and yeah, it's the way forward. It will give us a lot of more information about the tumor tissue. Yes, already our oncologists are doing this.
Next question is from Dr. Akhilesh. Can more than one mutation exist in one type of cancer?
Yes, so I showed you in one of my earlier slides that we have to understand that there may be multiple mutations in a cancer. You know, there are a lot of secondary changes, genetic changes also. Very large tumors have many mutations, but we need to understand which is the driver mutation, which is the main mutation which is causing the cancer, and when we target that one, then the tumor will shrink. Because if it is not the driver mutation and you're targeting it, then the impact on the tumor may not be there. So all this is research. This is important. Very good question. You need to know which is the lead or the driver mutation.
Next question, again from Dr. Akhilesh. How genomic sequencing be made more affordable? Would it increase in high volumes or number of cases bring down cost of chips?
So now, you know, they are doing next generation sequencing. Lot of new technology is coming so that you can quickly get the answers with a lesser price. And you know, the chips can be custom designed. You can have chips which will only target, say, non-small cell lung cancer, and you know that these are the 6. You don't need to look at the vast, like I said, you know, human genome has like 20,000 or more genes. You don't need to look at all the genes. So you can, so this work can be done in advanced cancer centers which have research facilities, and then you study the genes for a particular disease, and you design or customize chips for those cancers which, you know, you can, so for which targets are available, right? And when you do that, then, and if you test it for more patients, like right now, probably the cost may be like 10 or 20,000 rupees for doing a particular profile, right? But if you, and we are doing it for very few patients, you're right, if we have large numbers and we have chips which are custom designed, then the one-time cost of designing that chip will be expensive. But ultimately, if you have a good number of patients, you can, you know, roll it out fast, and you can have more patient numbers, then you can, you're absolutely right, higher number of patients, and then custom designing your chips, they will bring down the cost. And you know, I think when this becomes more widely used, the cost of these things will come down dramatically. Just look, everybody has a PC, everybody has a laptop, everybody has a mobile phone. We could not imagine this a decade ago. But when you use a thing so frequently, the cost is bound to come down. I think it's going to happen very soon.
Next question is from Vishal. How long will it take, according to you, to accept precision medicine as a sole treatment option in cancer, as it has proved to have lower side effects?
So I'll tell you, this is very controversial. So there's a bunch of scientists, bunch of cancer care clinicians, investigators who feel that this is the way it's going to happen. But there are a lot of people who don't believe it's ever going to happen. They think that it's going to be restricted to only a small subset of patients, and we may not have, because we don't know really that in most cancers this is going to prolong survival. We don't know this. So the jury is out there. I don't know the answer. If you know the answer, I'll be happy to hear it.
Next question is from Rahul. What are the reoccurrence rate of tumors in precision medicine?
So, the tumor shrinks, but it doesn't go away. Mostly, when a new drug comes, we try it out in patients with advanced cancer. So when you have an advanced cancer, because when you have a successful treatment for any cancer which is early stage, it is very difficult to try a new therapy for there, because if there are side effects, you cannot answer why it happened. So the first thing we try, first we test the drug in the lab, and then in animals, then in patients, in patients we do in cell lines also, tumor cell lines, and then we test it in patients who have advanced cancer where there is no successful curative treatment possible. And that also we do after taking consent from the family and making them understand that this new drug doesn't work. Right? So the tumor will shrink. I showed you that slide which said those who survived for 5.5 months, their progression-free survival was 5.5 months compared to 2.5 months for those who didn't get the drug. Right? So for lung cancer, for the newer agents, for any new agent, this is a hope that perhaps in the future we will find something. And it is true, it may be that we will find something. But I don't know. Time will tell. The jury is out there.
Next question is asked from Ramesh. What is the role of targeted therapy in usage of off-label therapies?
Okay, so off-label therapy. What do you mean off-label therapy? Now, in certain countries, like let's say USA, Germany, just giving you 2 examples, a drug can only be used if it is approved by the Federal Drug Agency. So there will be a regulatory compliance that will be required. A particular drug has been found to be safe and it has been used in so many patients. You have to show the data, you have to submit it to them. Then a group of experts will examine it and allow it. And it will be allowed for use for a particular disease. But when you use that drug for some other condition, then it is off-label use. And in India, many drugs are used off-label. For example, there may be a drug like sunitinib, which is used, or any drug, target drug, which is available. So let me tell you about crizotinib. Now, crizotinib first came into the market and got prominence for non-small cell lung cancer, which was ALK mutated. So the FDA approval may have been initially only for lung cancer. But if you found this mutation in any other cancer, and if you used it there, it would be off-label use. But in India, this regulatory is not so stringent. And this off-label use is there all the time. The physician's discretion, physician, uses his or her knowledge to decide whether it is safe and whether it will be useful for the patient.
Question again from Dr. Akhilesh.
Okay.
Can new mutations, he's asking, can new mutations be identified through heat maps generated by next generation sequence?
I think Akhilesh, you're a scientist, and I don't know the answer. I think you know the answer better than me. I'm sure you can get new genes. The important thing is to understand, is this the driver mutation? You may find 1,000 genetic mutations. Are they relevant? Are they the driver mutations? You have to ask that question. Just knowing that there is a mutation is not, drug development is a whole new, it's a whole big science. It's a whole big science. I'm not into drug development, but yes, definitely. I'm sure you can find abnormalities, you can find gene mutations in various ways. But whether that will help you to develop a drug, I don't know.
So due to time constraint, we are taking our last question. The question is, would NGS, next generation sequencing, be useful prognostic marker and part of continuous diagnostic companion?
So a lot of people are using now next generation sequencing. We have in our lab as well. And we have a chip which looks at a few thousand genes and it helps to profile the disease or that tumor of that particular patient. So I think it's going to become popular very quickly. I hope that it will actually help in improving cancer care. I do hope so. If it is used appropriately, scientifically, I'm sure it will help. But I think it's going to become popular very quickly. I think many labs now have this next generation sequencing. It's chip based, you get your answers quickly. You can interrogate many genes simultaneously. You can even put more samples together and, you know, reduce the cost. It's very, what should I say? It's very up and coming.
So before ending this session, I've got a new question, and I think it's a quite good question. This question is from Jyoti. What do you think could be the role of NCBI entrance, which has a lot of molecules with their structures and binding targets all described online? Is there a possibility that this data can be used to match up with genomic sequences received from patients?
I think you're talking about in silico research. I think it's very important. You have to start from there, because if you go to NCBI, you know, there is so much data, but you must know how to analyze it. It's flooded with data. So I think that is very important. And if someone can use that mapping, it will be excellent. I'm sure there are people who are already doing it. In the labs, I'm sure they're doing it. They use the NCBI data. There's huge amount of data there. It's in the public domain. You know, it's free. Anybody can use it. So I think in India, if we can encourage this kind of oncology research, it will be very, very useful. I think it will be very useful. Great question. Thank you.